Welcome to Rooted Intentionally. I'm Susan Carson, and it's my passion to create safe space for transformational encounters through listening, prayer, and spiritual practices. And in these podcasts and videos, we are bringing you a series on healing our image of God. And these are beautiful, fun, casual conversations and spiritual practices designed to help us all live more deeply rooted in the expanse of God's love for us. And today, I get to bring to you my dear friend, Andrea Bustin. Yay.
Hi.
Welcome, Andrea. I was so glad to have you with us. You are, first of all, everyone will notice you are a bright and shining light in the world. You are, and you bring us beautiful music through your gifts as you've been a worship leader, you're a songwriter, you're a recording artist. And so today we're going to get to talk about your newest release, which folks can find on lots of places, but there's the Spotify, right? Andrea Bustin, Holy Fallout. Everybody go. Follow, listen. You're gonna get to hear more about that today. But Andrea, as we get started, is there anything else that you want people to know about you?
Oh, wow. Like an intro to who I am.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely all those things, songwriter, worship leader, artist, but I'm a mom of two, Nadia and Marty, and I am a wife to Devin Bustin, a Canadian man that I love. I'm a local lady. I love my town. I live in Loveland, Ohio. I love walking everywhere. I would say my favorite person, like that I kind of look up to, is probably Mr. Rogers. Um, it's
Love
a
him.
beautiful day in the neighborhood. um, and yeah, I just like really resonate with him. I would say I'm probably the beloved the first things that come to mind in my relationship with God is I feel like maybe I'm Jesus's best friend. Maybe, I don't know. But it feels that way. And I feel tender. I would say I'm a very tender person. So I'm moved to tears most days. And I used to be ashamed of that, but I like accept that that's who I am. So, yeah.
Yes. Yes. You are, I would say, of all the people I have the privilege of knowing on the planet, the person I would most describe as a modern day mystic, because you
Mm,
do live in the love of God in a way that is unique to who you are, for sure, but unique in the world. And it really invites me to more deeply enter into the love of God. Just who you are has done that for me. So I'm excited for you to, I think, do that for a lot more people who are watching and listening.
I
Um,
love that.
well,
I
it's
always
true.
I think
It's
of a
true.
momentary mystic of myself, but I like that you see me that way.
Mm, absolutely.
Mm.
So we're talking in this series about healing our image of God. So I'd just love to start with, in your life, how was your image of God formed initially in your life and on your journey?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Pentecostal tradition, and so a lot of charismatic services I was taken to. I was actually thinking about that this morning, um, and the idea of a courtesy drop. So I still remember as a little kid having someone put their hand on my head and wanting me to be slain in the spirit. And so I would courtesy drop, like, "Ugh," and then keep my eye open to see if they'd left yet. Um, and that was around like age 6.
Wow.
Um, but then it was interesting this morning. I was thinking, and then that changed in my 30s where I stopped doing courtesy, like having a courtesy drop relationship with God, and I realized I was actually falling in that way in the spirit, and there is such a difference between trying to be polite with God and then being completely overwhelmed by God, and it's no courtesy at all. You're just falling, and
Mm,
that love is just like coming coming onto you like a weighted blanket. And I think my image of God has shifted over the years from being polite into being very much embodied and almost like unstoppable in
mm,
my experience of God. So,
mm.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm so curious about what it was about this God that you knew at this point that required your politeness.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, as a kid growing up with the idea um, that I was very sinful and that I always needed to be apologizing
Mm,
so that we could be friends or we could be in relationship, um, kind of was something that I was doing because it's what I was told to do. But in my like quiet
mm,
conversations with God, I would say like things to Jesus that were like really like sneaky in my little kid mind, which was, I actually don't like that you're my brother, because Jesus was a child of God and I was a child of God, and that your blood has to cover me so that I can come into the presence of my
mm,
Father. But I would only say that like in my quiet time, like where I was just kind of unpacking my heart to Jesus. And I never really got any answers. I kind of just kept going through the motions until I was older and I realized, oh wow, there are some way wider ways to be thinking about um, my relationship with God and my relationship with Jesus. And it's not, the center is not being covered in the blood. The center is actually coming from a place of original goodness and kind of peeling
mm,
that away to know that, oh wow, like God would like nothing more than to be in my presence, like
mm,
every moment of every day. And in fact, is with the very fact that I'm breathing, like I'm breathing the presence of God. But
mm,
that came over a long time. Um, I think I always felt really close to God, and felt like I could always be honest.
mm,
Um, but it was not really in the presence of the church. It was in like just me alone with God. Um,
mm,
and I think it's possible, like I think about this a lot, that I might have not, I might have had a really pure view of God when I was a kid in those quiet places that I've been trying to get back to in my adulthood. Um,
mm.
and I
Yeah.
think it's been a good journey. Like,
Mm, yeah. Clearly really young, right? You had this very simple, pure, honest sense of
yeah,
God. And I'm just so curious if there was something, and maybe there's no answer for this question, but if there was something in your life as a child that gave you space for that, or if that was just somehow the goodness of God breaking in to,
yeah.
yeah.
I actually have thought about that. I think it was because I was really close to my brother, and
Hmm.
our reality, like, is what is the gateway into the divine anyway. And so I felt really safe with my dad. And I never felt like I needed my brother to vouch for me so that I could be in the presence of my dad. I always felt like a favorite with him and with my brother.
Mm,
So it felt really natural to go to Jesus in the context of my family and just say the thing that I was experiencing, why wasn't I able to experience that on an infinite and a divine level? Um,
mhm.
but I knew it was wrong because it wasn't what I was taught in the church. And so I was kind of a good kid. I was a little good kid. So I didn't really bring those up. I just kept getting saved. I got saved all the time. Like
Yeah.
every altar call, I was up there. I'm like, are we good? But my dad asked me that why my experience, I was a missionary kid to Belarus from ages 10 to 18. And he always wondered why I felt so okay with the fact that they took us to a foreign country. And I retained my joy somehow, and I would just like rolled with the punches. I was one of the more like, I don't know, it was it was an adventure to me. And I remember
Mm,
him asking me that, and I realized like I told him that I really like trusted him to take care of me. I didn't have
wow.
a doubt that he would take care of me even in that place, so I was free to
Wow.
experience it.
Wow. What a gift.
Yeah, which doesn't mean like my relationship with my dad is perfect or anything.
Of
We have
course.
so many like
Of course.
things that we're like, oh, um, but at the same time, there was that sense of, which I do think plays into the earthly father, heavenly father. I think it's God playing into that role because I was making space for that, but I'm
Yeah.
not fully sure.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that idea that what we experience in the natural, right, somehow opens a door in the spiritual to
Yeah,
um I think that is really true. So your experience of that as a child obviously was very formative and powerful for you.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So I wonder as your story has unfolded, what are the things that began to open for you another way, that space where you didn't have to keep going up and getting saved every service, and where you didn't need to be so polite with God? Like
Yeah.
what are some of the things on your journey that have opened that up for you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Um, Probably like my pain.
Mhm.
Um,
That's not the answer any of us want, right? It's
um,
true, but
Public humiliation,
oh,
pain, like like private humiliation. Um, I mean, I'm laughing, but I know it's true. Um, so when I was probably the first starter of like a really deepening like sense of the Holy Spirit was God has this way of letting me know things like a decade later. Like know that God was totally working in it. So I would say time, pain and time
mm,
equals my growth in the spirit in love for God. But I can share this one story.
yeah.
I was When I was 22, I got pregnant with my fiance and now husband, Devin, and we totally had intended to be married like 3 months from then. But then we're like, yeah, we really like each other. We've been dating for a long time. But I did get pregnant, and it was like one of the most painful
Mm,
things because um, as the pastor's daughter, and it was like, oh my goodness, is she this and this
mm,
because of her breaking of this sacred vow or whatever that she's made. And so I was asked by the elders of my church to stand in front of the church and confess my sin, which was one of the most like heavy moments of my life. And I did it because I was the curtsy girl. I was like the polite girl. But in my mind, I was like, but why isn't so and so confessing for this and this and this? And I knew all of these sins that were going on, but I was being set apart. Um, and it was so painful. And so my
Mm.
wedding day was after that. And I was covered in shame for
Oh,
my for my wedding day. I had people say, well, you can't wear white to your wedding because you're no longer pure. Um, and and here's how the story unfolds like a decade or 15 years later in this instance where intimacy was built with God. I was um, I was in a flower shop a couple months before my wedding, and I really wanted to choose yellow tulips. They were my favorite flower, but there weren't any available. And so I had to choose another flower, and they were like, think of another flower, we might have it. And so the flower I chose was daisies. And I
mm.
remembered Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks in You Got Mail. When she was sick, she was like, daisies are the friendliest flower. And so for some reason, that line went through my head, and I chose daisies. Well, um, every year on my anniversary, I pick up daisies and I put them in the house. And
Mm.
this anniversary, this is 15 years later, I was looking at the daisies, and the Lord said to me, like in a whisper, um, you should learn about them. And I was like, oh, I do love to learn about flowers. So I Googled daisies and like their meaning, and it's like innocence and purity, but
Mm.
they're the gift that you give to new mothers when they're giving birth. So
Wow.
little did I know, an instinct had told me to buy daisies for my wedding. So in every picture, in every moment, I was surrounded by a blessing from God saying, as a gift to a mother who's giving birth. And so I think
Wow.
that's what I mean. It's like my pain, and this keeps happening where my pain, if I notice, if I slow down to the whisper years later, God God reveals like a really beautiful thing. And then it was really cool because that same weekend, the 15 years later, I was at a baby shower, and my friend had all of these cake pops and they had daisies on them.
Oh.
And I was like, do you know what those are? And it was her first baby. She's like, no, I just like daisies. And I told her the story, and we all just kind of like hushed. And I decided to tell the story to the depth of what it was.
Mm.
And then she was like, take all the cake pops. So I took a bunch of daisy cake pops home. And then I knew I hadn't ever told my daughter this story, my 14-year-old daughter. And I knew that it was the day to tell her that about the pain that had happened surrounding, but also the blessing of
Mm.
she was right on time. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. No mistake I ever made could even be thought of as anything but glory in the presence of God. And
Yeah.
so then she puts her hair behind her ears, and she's wearing earrings she had made that morning of daisies.
No.
Not
No.
like I can't write this stuff. Like I was like, am I living a Harry Potter novel? What is this? Like but it's flow. And I that's the only word I can come up for. I'm like, what is this?
Mm.
So
Wow.
holy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. And I'm so sorry that you experienced that pain.
Yeah.
Um, we know each other's stories well enough to know that we've both experienced some pain at the hands of some different churches.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and that pain does does a work in us, right? It's almost like it cracks us open so that the flow can happen.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it it does. And like that church, the pastors of that church came to me years later and apologized.
did they?
We had a reconciliation that was
Wow.
very deep and beautiful, um, which I can't say for every church where that's happened, but it did with that one. And so
Mm,
over a period of time, I feel like the Holy Spirit just reveals, um, I don't know, even more and more healing, that I don't even think to ask for. It's so
mm.
deep and so
Yes.
beautiful.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah,
And it seems like it has, I mean, as I'm listening, what I'm thinking is it has so much to do with this movement from like original sin
yes,
and depravity to this beauty of original goodness.
yeah,
Um, and so I'm curious how theologically, like what's helped you sort of
yeah,
recenter your faith around that.
yeah. That's such a beautiful question. Um, I literally was telling the gospel story in a new way to a friend of mine who, um, she doesn't really know how to handle, what has happened to her in the church, and like, just some of the pain she's experienced within the walls of the church. And she was like, how do you still like love Jesus and like
Mm,
proclaim Jesus? I'm like,
yeah.
oh my goodness. I'm like, I will not start crying because I don't want to freak you out. But I told her, I was like, imagine like the same story that we've been told. And in the beginning, God created us, and the first sacrifice that was ever made was not God asking for it, but it was Abel responding to what he wanted to give to God. And so God
Mm,
accepted that sacrifice, but he never asked for it. But he always works with us from wherever we are and kind of
mm,
like ups the ante a little, like, well, if you're going to give a sacrifice, this is how incredibly holy I am. And so for years and years, God was working with us from wherever we were. And we kept trying. And it was like beautiful because it's like the kid that's trying and trying, but maybe not asking the right questions. Like maybe
mm,
following not the instinct that was the purest instinct, which was come with me and walk with me in the cool of the day, but we're just trying to make it right and give these sacrifices. But God never asked for it. I mean, and I've checked this. So then, the one I said, this is why I follow Jesus still, and I follow that faith tradition, like, because it's so meaningful to me. The one time God had a chance to speak for himself, he came and he said, I require no sacrifice of you at all. I'm just
mm,
going to require a sacrifice of myself. So you'll
mm,
never have to do it again. You'll never have to bring anything to me again. I bring it for you because that's
mm,
who I am. And I'm like, I can't with that kind of a story. I can't with that kind of loving. It's like that Tina Turner song that's like, you're simply the best,
mm.
better than all the
The
rest.
best, yes.
And that, I think that's like, I think the way that my faith changes is simply like following in a loving instinct and then following that question in that trail. So for
Mm,
instance, I was sitting in my basement the other morning and I was being very like cute with God, and I was like, I love you more than you love me. Like it was very like nose to nose kind of a sweetie moment where I knew God would respond with something fabulous. And God was like, "That's so funny that you say that." And I felt like that whole like spirit knows Eskimo kiss. Um, but you could never love me to the depth and capacity that I love you. It's so deep. It would overwhelm you to love me to the capacity to which I love you. And I was like, fine, you have a little more infinite love than I do, but I worship you better than you worship me. And I thought I had God. And then God reminded me of that story. And God was like, for thousands of years, you've brought your sacrifices as a way to love me and to worship me and to make things right between us. And you always brought something outside of yourself. But the moment I had a chance to do the same and I was in your shoes, I brought myself as a
Mm,
sacrifice. So
mm,
who worships who better? And
mm,
then I just started crying because I'm like, how will I raise my head? How can I not pay homage
mm. Yeah,
every like moment of every day?
yeah. So beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it is truly good news, right?
Yes,
It's the best. It is simply the best. God is simply the best. The news is simply the best.
I
Yes.
know. And
Yeah.
it's so simple. I feel like we try so hard to like get the right theology and get make sure our beliefs are perfectly correct, but I kind of feel like with in my loving in my experience of loving God, it's simply like quieting in and then saying something sweet because you're a little bit in love and then following that trail to the next question and then the next moment and then seeing
Mm.
how far it'll go. So yeah, like
Yes.
I
Yes.
think you don't have to memorize so much. I think like as a little girl who grew up in the church, there's so much in me that I can just pull out and access, but it can be wounding if I access it without that love surrounding
Mm.
it. Because I think of the Bible as like the sword of the spirit sometimes, and
Mm.
it can cut if you access it in the wrong way without that barrier of love. And I think God just puts like this love barrier around even like
Mm.
how I approach him anymore because I mean shame and guilt and all these feelings can come in to my story so easily unless like love has surrounded me like myelin around a cell. It's like Psalm 23 says, fear cannot conquer me because your love already has.
Mm.
And that's the Passion Translation. So I
Mm.
don't know if that answers your
So
question.
good. It's so good. It's
Yeah,
so good.
it's so deep. I don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah, but it's so deep, and yet I hear a beautiful simplicity, right? And how you experience that with God. And I think that's an invitation to me and to all of us. Like, I think we overcomplicate everything with our
Yes.
need to have all our ducks in a row.
Yes.
Um, and it,
Yeah.
there's just a simplicity and a honesty and a sweetness to it that is
Yes.
really inviting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved to memorize scripture as a kid and which is funny, but I was on like the junior Bible quiz team and I wasn't very good. So I kind of felt like I needed to like up my game. But I was never very good. I was always the B team on junior Bible quiz.
Ooh.
Um, but then later in life, I just loved memorizing, especially Psalms. But
Mm,
then when I was a part of the church and started like asking harder questions like why aren't women allowed to be in this and this leadership, and what about the gays, like why can't the LGBTQ community be allowed to lead classes when the guy who's very judging and judgmental is also allowed, like even if you see it as a sin it still doesn't like make sense to me, because we can't get outside of this of just sin generally. And you would never tell the person with cancer that they can't lead because they're out of the will of God because they have cancer. I'm like, what is happening? And I realized like the Bible was being used like as that sword to just wound,
Mm,
wound. And for a long time, I was very wounded by
mm,
what was precious to me, what I saw as like a very precious place for me to go and
mm.
recite the Psalms, but it was being used to attack my friends and attack me. And so I stopped reading the Bible actually for a little while. And by a little while, I mean like a couple of years. Um, and I felt really like guilty about it. But then I was sitting with the Lord, and the Lord was like, find the butterfly in the Bible. And I was like, okay. And it's not there. And the butterfly has always been like a symbol of spiritual transformation for me.
Mhm.
Um, like like even death into life, and like even the cocoon, and if someone's in a cocoon and struggling, you don't open the cocoon, they have to build the muscles, it's like the most beautiful
Yes.
metaphor. Saint Teresa of Avila talks about how we are the butterfly with the tattered wings.
Mm,
um, and so I realized like, oh my goodness, this is so much bigger than this one space that I love, and I love to be in the word, but it's so much bigger than that, and I needed to be okay with that. So,
yes.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's beautiful. So I want to move us up more to the present moment, because I know a bit about your process of bringing this beautiful new, do we still call them albums? This beautiful, yes, all right, this beautiful new
Album.
album of music to
Yeah.
us, and that's been very formative for you. And so I'd love to hear about Holy Fallout in your journey. And I know there's a particular poet that's been very meaningful to you in this. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So, Holy Fallout is the album, and it's based on the poetry of a Sufi mystic named Hafiz, Hafiz of Shiraz. And he wrote these beautiful love poems to God. And when I first read his poetry, I finally had language for what I only felt like in my heart, but I knew like, and I knew it to be
Mm,
true like the moment I read it, because it opened up this part of me that was like a deeper well. He has this
mm,
beautiful poem that talks about the wells within each of us, and how each well fills with each good new rain. But there are
mm,
some wells in us that are so deep that it takes years and years and years to fill that well, almost like a diamond forming. And so
mm,
when we give that diamond to a stranger who doesn't know how to take care of it, it takes like years and years and years to reform that
mm,
diamond.
mm,
So, and the poem is, each have wells within us. Each well fills with each new rain, but some are far, far too deep for that.
mm,
And I knew it was like, oh, that is the depth of what I am experiencing within friendships. I mean, even like the idea of pearls before swine, and
mm,
just this idea of Oh, can I say the rest of that poem?
Yeah.
In that poem, he says, the kind of friends that we need are the kind that take a knife and they cut pieces of their own soul and then weave a blanket from that in order to protect you and put that blanket around you. So he's,
Wow.
I know. So he's talking about the kind of friends who take pieces of themselves, like precious
Mm.
pieces of themselves, to protect you, as opposed to ones who don't know how to protect you, and you would never want to give your diamond to that kind
Yeah.
of a friend because they're not ready yet. Or so anyway, I was
Yeah.
reading these poems like this by Hafez, and I had just left. It'd been 2 years since I'd been a part of a church body because just I was dealing with a lot of spiritual trauma, and I had to leave the community that I was in order to make space for that. Um, because I was getting too big. Like
Mm.
something in me was getting so big that it was starting to scare that community. And so I think that
Mm.
can happen sometimes where the love starts to expand, that it actually starts to scare the people around us. Like, don't get don't get too big. Like, just you're starting to act like you're Jesus or something. I'm like, "Mm, child of God. I'm a child of God. I feel really infinitely big, and in love."
Mm.
But Hafez was the only poet who had ever been able to put to words what I only felt in my heart.
Mm.
And so he has this incredible story that I really resonate with, and where he saw this woman, and it's before he became a master poet, but he saw this beautiful woman, and he was a baker. I was a baker once, so I really liked that too. Um, but he was a baker in Shiraz, and she passed by, and he was awestruck by her beauty. And so
Mm.
he went to a sage, like a master in his town, and he was like, "I have to win this woman. I have to win her. I want to give her all my love." And the master sage says, "Okay, well, then you're going to have to work really hard. And for 40 days, you're going to have to fast and pray in a graveyard after work. And then after that, if you actually do it, then an angel will come and tell you the next part." So in this story, and they say it's true. Hafez, for 40 days, fasts and prays every night after work and meets in this graveyard. So he's also not sleeping. So at the end of the 40 days,
Wow.
the angel Gabriel comes to him, and the angel Gabriel says, "I've seen what you've been doing, and I want to grant you like your heart's desire." But the moment that Hafez sees the angel Gabriel, he drops to his knees and he says, "I didn't know beauty until I saw a face like yours, and yours is like the face of God. And
Mm.
I will work my entire life to give my love to like not this woman anymore, but to God." And
Mm.
so that's the start of his journey. And then he writes hundreds and hundreds of poems as a result. So,
Wow.
so these
Wow.
are some of his poems that he wrote.
Yeah, so you taken some of these poems and you have brought music to them
Yeah,
to bring them to us, and they're beautiful,
yeah,
beautiful
yeah.
songs. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a beautiful one that it's called Love Mischief on the album, but it talks about oh no, I can't remember my own song. um, but it's like the sun never said to the earth, "You owe me."
Mm.
Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky.
Mm.
And so, oh, I mean, even like there's a theology that forms in me around that that lines up with the theology that's been gifted to me in my quiet time.
Mm.
And the Franciscans. I should have noted Richard Rohr's been really important to me in
Mm.
his minority opinion of original blessing versus original sin. So anyway, Hafiz lines up with this theology that I find really dear, which is,
Mhm.
the sun never said to the earth, you owe me.
Mm. It's gorgeous, which lines up not coincidentally with the early church fathers. Yes.
Yeah, St.
Yeah.
Francis of Assisi too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, I would love it. We always end these episodes with a spiritual practice. And so I would love it today if you would bring us a spiritual practice in one of your songs that we could enter into these lyrics and the beauty of the music as a way of just engaging right with the love of God for us. So, what song are you going to bring us today?
So I think I'm going to play Holy Fallout, which is the title track on the album.
Awesome.
So it's kind of a song about like coping skills a little bit. And love.
Mhm.
Out of great need, we are holding hands and climbing. Not loving is letting go. Listen, the terrain around here is far too dangerous for any of us to be letting go. We are often in a battle, so often defending every side. Surely one who's lasted as long as you knows an avenue or place to hide. Sit down, my dear. Take a few deep breaths. Think about a loyal friend. Have you reached them yet? Where is your music? Where is your pet? Could you brush your hair? If you cannot slay your panic, then say so be it deep within. Open up your life again and let whatever's out there come charging in. But if you still feel helpless, give out one more battle cry. There could be a holy fallout. Your voice is eloquent. Sit down, my dear. Take a few deep breaths. Think about a loyal friend. Have you reached them yet? Where is your music? Where is your pet? Could you brush your hair? There could be a holy fallout.
Mm. So beautiful. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure.
So I mentioned Spotify at the beginning. I know there are other ways for people to find your music. So what are the best ways for people to find you?
Yeah, if you have a Spotify or iTunes or another account, that's wonderful, and you can totally listen to me. If you want me to make the money as an artist, you would go to my website, andreabustin.com, and you would download it directly. Um, Spotify and iTunes and all these larger streaming platforms are really great if you have a huge following, but for local musicians that are kind of doing a quieter work, it's better to go directly to their website. So, yeah.
Awesome. So good to know.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, my dear. And I know people are going to want to go to your website and to Spotify and to all the places and hear the rest of your beautiful music. Thank you. Thank you for that gift to us.
My pleasure. Thank you for
Mhm.
having me, Susan.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you for joining us. If you want to connect with me, you can head to my website, susancarson.net. You'll find my book and other episodes of the podcast, some free stuff. I'd love for you to follow me on Facebook or Instagram. Mostly, I just love to connect with you and serve you in any way that is helpful to you.
Mm.
So, again, thanks for joining us. And we bless you today to live deeply rooted in love.